I do really clearly remember asking myself, like, either you can just give up and kind of like let your life go and just be angry at the fact that you've lost someone so important to you, or you can just keep going. That's the only time I remember having such a clear question with myself, but I just decided, to just keep on keeping on. I always not I liked the removal. Like I like just kind of being able to disconnect from like the everyday life and the kind of like the city life and just be in nature. I feel like that's very healing. So if we're feeling anxious, it is our body's natural response. And I think sometimes we forget that.
I think that our natural instinct are messed up at the moment because
Yeah,
we are worrying for absolutely the wrong things. We are worrying
absolutely.
what our colleagues is thinking about us. We are worrying how to make our boss happy, and these are the nonsense things that we worry about it every day. And I think if a lion will approach us, we'll say,
Yeah.
"I'm okay," and
Yeah.
and this is a general issue of the society at the moment. I'm fully with you, and I think this not allowing ourselves to be alone anymore. When you have to stay for 2 minutes in a queue, you pick up your phone and you just start dumb scrolling. Hi, Kiana, and welcome to Whereabouts Tales.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time, Kiana. I'm happy that you accepted the invite. Maybe shortly before we start, I would like to tell the story how we got in contact because I think it's interesting. I've seen one of your comments on Reddit.
Yeah.
My social media is Reddit. I don't have any other social media except the one for the podcast, but
Oh
my
yeah.
social media is Reddit. And I've seen one of your comments, and I got in contact because I thought you had an interesting point there, and I think
Yeah.
it's interesting to talk.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely love anything where it's like a conversational topic about human nature. I'm like ready to dive into it. I don't
That
really use Reddit, funnily enough, but I did download it about a year ago because I was obsessed with those "Am I the asshole" stories, and then I just yeah.
I honestly am thinking since a while. I don't know if you are watching the Ask Reddit subreddit. We go into a rant about Reddit, but if you watch the Ask Reddit subreddit, oh my
Yeah.
god, oh
The
my god,
stories
I
are hilarious.
I'm planning to do an episode on that only to have a good laugh.
Yeah.
It's just insane. Yeah.
Uh,
The somehow the fact that you are anonymous there, I think that gives people somehow the freedom
yeah,
to share, talking about human
absolutely.
nature.
Yeah.
Um, I want to have a short little question regarding Reddit. You have a really interesting nickname on Reddit. Have you?
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice you picked that out too with the episode title, yeah.
Was it on purpose?
It was on purpose. It's definitely like a username that I've had for like a while on different socials that I used to have. And I just always thought that like philosophical theory of like hedonism was an interesting one. And then I kind of like the juxtaposition of like doing it with like haram hedonism. So yeah.
It goes deep in 2 words.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Nice. Kiana Burton. Also on the full name, we have to say the originally from Canada, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How was it? So it's Windsor, Ontario, or
Yes.
it's Windsor. I'm
Windsor,
not really
Ontario. Yeah, because
okay.
Ontario is like the province and then Windsor's the city. It's like the southernmost point of Ontario. So it's actually bordered to Detroit. So it has a lot of like American culture just because we're
Okay.
so close to the States.
So first interesting fact, I don't know if you know that there is an English city name, city slash village name, which is called Windsor, and it's the place where Queen Elizabeth. Well, she died for
Yes.
such a short time, and I forgot her name. Queen Elizabeth has her favorite castle, right? You know it?
Yes, yes. Yeah, because Canada used to be initially a part of the
Yeah,
British Empire, so that's why we have like a little
Commonwealth.
overlap with those names. Yeah.
But have you seen Windsor, like the English one?
No, no, no,
Hmm.
no.
Okay, I for whomever is watching this, I cannot recommend it enough. It's an amazing small city slash village. I visited before the 100-year events of the Queen, so it was even nicer. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. Um, Kiana, I heard so many stories about Canada. So growing up in Romania, Canada was a dreamland. Besides US, which was the land of all possibilities, Canada was
Yes.
a dreamland.
Hmm.
Why it was a dreamland? Because you had the impression that you are extremely good protected there in Canada. Now tell me, how was your experience growing up in Canada? Was it the same?
I honestly, that was my experience. I was very, very Canada proud growing up. It was just like very nice, like beautiful country. Everyone was super polite. I like the fact that we did have healthcare. My dad it was American, so he served in like the Vietnam War. But then when he met my mother, he moved to Canada.
Hmm.
Um, and we just would compare stories, and it just seemed like it's so funny when anyone says America's like the land of the free, because I'm like, is it though? When I'm not too sure.
I would say more the land of the rich now, but it's a different story.
Yeah. That's a different conversation, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I do really like Canada. I would recommend it to anyone. I have so much regret about not being more well traveled within Canada because it's just such a beautiful country. We have so much green space, and the mountain views out west are like incredible. So I'm trying to do more of that, especially with like the tensions right now between Canada and the US. I'm definitely trying to travel more within Canada and just say that I know my country beyond my province. So,
Makes
yeah.
sense. Makes sense. I think this is a really good point that you're making there. I think we don't travel in our country, or we don't travel
Hmm.
in the country that we live in, because you always think, It's so easy
Yeah,
reachable. Like it's always there. You can always have it. Like,
absolutely. I will
but we
say
miss good
probably
things.
because you're in Europe, it might be easier for you to kind of like poke around and explore. Whereas like Canada, I think the one thing that I would critique it on a lot is it costs so much to travel within Canada as a Canadian. Like most Canadians can't afford to like travel just to the other side of the country. It's just not a realistic price range, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, it's sad. Like I think like Canada's biggest tourist trap or tourist attraction area would probably be Banff, which is in Alberta. And I've had like I've got to go most recently. But it would be a lot of money. Like you would be easily spending like two, three, $4,000 if you were to spend like a week there or something. So it's like one of those things where it's like, of course you want to explore your country, but it's one of those things where if it was a bit more affordable, maybe.
But so first question, what's usually the go-to mean of transportation in Canada? Do you take airplane usually?
I do personally. I do also like driving, like, but Ontario is such a massive province. Like it's kind of comparable to Texas because if you drive
Oh,
like
okay.
10, 12, 13, 14 hours, you're still in Ontario. So it's yeah, so and I've definitely done it. Like I right now I live in Ottawa, but again, I'm originally from Windsor and that's about an 8-hour drive. I've flown to Windsor a couple of times, but I actually prefer the drive. But I would never drive out west, even though it is recommended. Apparently it's very, very scenic, but I just don't have the stomach for like a 30 hour drive or something. So I just don't want to do it.
I mean, the last episode, I talked to someone from US who said exactly the same. Like I don't know. I kind of used to the European drive, because in US, like 8-9 hours, like yeah, we do it. It's okay. More
Yeah.
than 9 hours is like meh.
Yeah. Yeah. We have
That's
a
the sweet
tap out.
spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, the size is not comparable to Europe, because I discuss this quite often.
Hmm.
That First of all, the size is not comparable to anything that we have in Europe, and the second thing is that we are so ignorant in Europe because we keep seeing those shorts on YouTube or on social media with the stupid American guys who don't know which is the capital of France and or don't know the capital of Germany. And
Yeah.
if you turn the tide and you ask someone from Europe which is the capital of I don't know of Ontario or
Yeah.
no or of yeah, Windsor is in the
Of
Ontario region, but Ontario is
yeah.
also the capital of the region.
Yeah, like it's like like the primary province, and
Oh,
technically
okay.
Toronto is, I guess,
You see,
Ontario's capital, but the
this is what
capital
I
of
mean.
Canada is Ottawa. So
Yeah,
I can
that I
understand
know.
how some
Yeah.
people get confused there. I
That
can't.
so I know the capital of Canada is Ottawa, but I mean this state. We cannot even mention name all the provinces in Canada. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying
Yeah.
why it's easy to be ignorant. It's easy to pretend they don't know, but it's not the same. It's not the same cup of
Yeah.
tea. How how was the culture when you grew up in Canada? Like is that the community feeling everywhere? Like Windsor, I do guess it's a small city, right?
It's funny that you say that because I always explained like and thought of Windsor as being like a small town. Like I'd always refer to it as a town. My friends who grew up in Windsor refer to it as a town, but it does have a population of like 276,000. So, so whether or not that fits the bill of small
Nope.
town.
Nope. Sorry. Nope.
It's so funny too because when I moved to Ottawa, I was meeting like friends and around the area, and there's like a small town, literal town called Russell, and then there's surrounding towns called Napanee. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm from a small town too, and they're like, oh yeah, like our population was 3,000 people, and I was like, okay, okay, yeah, so,
Maybe not so small.
yeah, maybe not so small, yeah, yeah.
So, okay, that makes it even more interesting because
Hmm.
I would say maybe it's a small city for Canada for sure because we talk about different sizes, we talk about huge cities. But
Yeah.
have you had that community feeling growing up?
I did. I did. And I'm grateful because like I am a millennial. So I definitely feel like because I got to grow up kind of, I wouldn't say in the total absence of technology, but it just didn't have my generation in a
Hmm.
chokehold the same way that it did for like the generations now, or the same way that it does for the generations now. Of course, like we had like MySpace and Facebook and all of those things, but I was outside so often with my friends. Like we were biking, we'd go for walks. Like it just felt like there was a lot more like intrapersonal connection. And there was just a sense of community amongst friends in the schools. Not so much in my family dynamic, but I would say generally speaking, like Windsor was that. And Windsor used to be an incredibly safe city. But now if you look up the statistics for Windsor, it is increasingly one of the more violent cities, which is unfortunate, but in the wake of like drug trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, all of that, and us being a border city and getting most of our drugs, not necessarily from Detroit, but actually from Toronto, it just is kind of a recipe for disaster. Windsor used to have, and I'm not sure if this is absolute. I can double check, but it used to be like Windsor didn't have a shooting. Like its last shooting was like 1984 is kind of the number that's sticking out in my head. And then when roughly 2017 or 18 rolled around, like basically our crime statistics shot up by like 400%. So it's sad to see the way that Windsor is now versus the Windsor that I knew and grew up in.
But what brought so much trafficking lately there?
There's just a general increase in crime, especially when you consider like just sort of socioeconomic factors and
Oh,
like
okay.
Windsor is also it is the automotive capital of Canada. And so there's actually not a lot of room for job growth in Windsor unless you are a laborer or in the automotive industry. If you're working kind of anywhere else, you're going to find a difficult time. Even nursing, which there's always a demand for nursing, but we're again a border city, and they're going to pay our nurses more in the state. So there's still a demand for all these areas, but it's just there's just it just there's no reward, I guess, for working in Windsor, which is another kind of unfortunate
Uh-huh.
thing when we think about the city.
So it's the down spiral of not having enough jobs, lacking quality of life, and then of course the easy money that you can make are the illegal ones.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely the most influential factor. And I think obviously when COVID happened, we saw COVID had a massive impact on mental health in Canada. And I'm going to probably just speak to Ontario more specifically, but we just saw an increase in crime. We saw an increase in mental illness, namely depression and things of that. So those all have such an easy impact on crime statistics that it didn't surprise me at all that we see that increase. And also, social media has an impact because we've seen also an increase in crime amongst youth that we'd never really seen before, even though we have this kind of lax Youth Criminal Justice Act that's supposed to kind of give us a little bit of like ease when we're approaching youth criminals because we don't want them to recidivate. We don't want them to feel like their life is the way that it is forever. But anyway, that's a whole different topic, and I always have a lot to say on that just because I do work in criminal
But
law, so I'm always like,
I we'll get to that in a second. But I have a curiosity here. Do you think it's I have an opinion, but I will share it after you share yours. Do you think it's the missing social interactions that affected us during COVID?
oh,
Um,
for sure, for sure, and I think yeah, I would. You are so on the money when you say that because I think that we are such an independent, like humans are interdependent. It is built into our sociology. It is, we need it. We need humans, especially in our first few years of life. We cannot survive without them. It would be very, very difficult. And even before we had like the social sort of status and way of being and doing things that we have now, we've always been an interdependent animal. So when you take away those social components, it really does make us kind of go a little bit crazy, for lack of better words. So that's definitely a factor that influences so much, for sure.
this is a literally downside of COVID, which nobody thought about. They all think about of course, the first impact, which was the health impact, and the
Yeah,
long term COVID or the long COVID or however they call it, but nobody thought about the mental part of
yeah.
it. And what scares me, and I have to say it, I think I said it before, but what scares me really a lot was the, again, human nature, coming back to the topic, because
Yeah.
you've seen how people reacted when they were in power. Like they could decide on your life and you couldn't say anything about it.
Do you mean with respect to like the COVID shots or
No,
whatever?
no,
Oh,
no, no,
okay.
no, no, no. I mean, I mean the fact that they could decide, for example, which is a critical business, which is not a critical business.
Oh,
They could
okay.
this,
Yeah.
and I think that's so bad that made so many people rethink their own logic in life, because when someone is
Hmm.
closing your business, if you have a small restaurant, then that
Yeah.
means you are going completely bankrupt and you are screwed
Yeah.
for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I think that makes you really rethink everything about your life until then, because
Oh,
most probably
100%.
you paid all your taxes in time. You have done everything right,
Yeah.
and out of the sun someone said, your business, no, it's actually not essential.
Yeah. My heart broke for so many small business owners because, like, that's a big deal. If you launch your own business, like, that's a pat on the back. So, like, the way that those business owners were treated during the height of the pandemic, like, I don't even know how you rectify something like that.
Coming back to Windsor, um,
Yeah.
I have the reason why I'm asking you about the community. I've
Yeah.
read Michelle Obama's book. I think it's called Becoming, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And she's telling there a really nice story about the fact that she was raised by the by the community. So whenever
Okay.
her parents were not at home, they had the neighbors on the corner of the street, Miss Jackson or Miss,
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember the name, or Mister, and they were calling her mom, Michelle did this and that, Michelle.
Yeah.
And I find the story so heartwarming because you think
Yeah.
that's like an extended family, right? So
Yeah.
your neighbors are actually more important than your family because they are there
Hmm.
all the time. And that's why
Hmm.
I'm asking you if you had this feeling growing up in Canada.
I think I feel like that could be said for any small community, and that's especially the case for I think people of that generation too, where again, crime statistics were different. There was a greater sense of community. There was a greater sense of social responsibility. There was a greater sense of respect, and I think probably most importantly, we had social norms that people didn't deviate from the way that they do today. And I think that I remember hearing those stories from like my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. Like it's the same thing. Like, you know, the neighbors, you'd run down the street, you could stay there, you could go there for dinner. You know, they'd be like, hey, do your parents know you're here? I had a bit of that just because my mother she had 8 other siblings. So I had a lot of aunts and uncles, and I had a lot of cousins. But we were kind of dispersed throughout the city, which kind of makes me think in my head, why did I ever think Windsor was a small town? Like, not quite a small town. So maybe not the same sense of community, but I did feel safe growing up. I never felt overly like I needed to look over my shoulder, but of course, like safety and stuff was taught. I remember they used to have like Windsor police go to the schools and like give like little pep talks. And when bullying was kind of like they had just sort of rolled out those like hotlines and stuff. And I just felt like everything about my childhood made sense. It almost felt like a bit like a movie. Like it almost feels like it didn't happen. I really have no complaints about my childhood. Like it wasn't perfect and there was definitely trauma there, but I think overall I'm grateful for the exposure that I had and the connections that I made. So,
How would you compare though that social life, that social community from Windsor with the other cities that you've been living in?
um, so Ottawa, I moved here on a whim. Like I didn't really know anything about Ottawa other than that it was Canada's capital. So I think I had set the bar really high for Ottawa. I was like, this is going to be amazing. It's like the capital. And so
Expectation management.
yeah, Ottawa's a little bit boring. Had I done any research at all, it definitely has a reputation as being a boring city. I don't want to crap all over Ottawa. It's very, very beautiful. There's a lot of green space, which is my favorite thing. I love to be out in nature. But I think Ottawa just like it feels like there's no sense of community here. I think that would be my biggest takeaway because at least in Windsor, at least when I was growing up, there was a sense of community. I think that Windsor is a city that has a lot of soul and it still has a lot of potential to come back and be something greater than it is. Ottawa has the same potential, but it really is like this sleepy business town. Like if you want to find something fun and exciting to do, whether regardless of what age group you fall into, I don't know that Ottawa is the place to do it. I'm not really sure, but
So what
yeah.
I understood, I let me sum it up. If you are a 55-year-old businessman,
Yeah,
Ottawa is the
visit
place to
Ottawa.
be.
Yeah. No, I've had friends visit. I'm a pretty good tour guide, but it's like you definitely have to like kind of sniff things out. Like it's like if you were to go to Toronto or Montreal, you can kind of just walk into an event and be like, "Oh my gosh, there's something going on here. This looks so fun," or look at this little shop or whatever. Ottawa does not have that. Ottawa does not have that. Ottawa also has a very large like homelessness and drug
Oh,
problem,
okay.
which I wouldn't have expected again for this city's capital, or sorry, Canada's capital. Um, but yeah, it's a little alarming and it kind of is a massive deterrent. Like I personally don't like to go downtown for that reason. It just doesn't really seem safe. And I think there are opinions about the police service in Ottawa. So there's, I think, opinions largely about the police service in Ontario because, like I said, there's an increase in crime, but then the areas that they're appearing to focus on are highway traffic related. So we have an increase in murders, assault bodily harm, and sexual assault. And they're like, but that person is speeding. Seems to be a little bit of an issue.
The least of the problems, the
Yeah.
least of the problems, but the
So,
easy one to address.
yeah, absolutely.
Why have you moved outside of Windsor in the first place?
Windsor was a town that I really didn't like until I left, and then I was like, wow, but I actually would never move back to Windsor.
Okay.
Um, I've lived it, I know it. It is what it is. I'll always recommend people to go. If you ever go to Windsor, it is also the pizza capital of Canada. So if you want the best pizza in Canada, you got to go to Windsor. And I will die on that hill. Absolutely. So but yeah, Windsor was missing the kind of professional growth that I like to see for myself, and it was also missing green space. So those
Hmm.
are two big things for me in terms of like how I see my life. I want to be able to, drive a relatively short distance and then be in like the mountains or the woods or whatever. And Windsor is not that. And Ottawa is definitely not where I'm gonna spend the rest of my life because it just doesn't do anything for me. I've never really had a sense of home here, but I have had a lot of career growth here. So I'm not shitting on Ottawa. It's not my forever home.
Have you moved out with a purpose, or you have studied at the beginning in Windsor, so you have done your studies in Windsor?
Yeah, so I did like my grade school, high school, and then university education in Windsor.
Okay.
And then I did postgraduate education in Ottawa.
Hmm.
And then that's where I kind of got my start in my career. Whereas in Windsor, I was just working in like retail management. And it just wasn't like a passion of mine. And you're kind of you can kind of only do so much and make so much when you're like a store manager or something like that. So
I don't know why I understand that. Uh, uh, would you mind sharing what you have studied in university? Because I think
Yes.
it's extremely interesting.
Yeah, so I started with a combined honors in criminology and psychology, but then I ended up actually dropping my psychology major to a minor because I was doing so well in criminology, and then I realized that I wanted to do something more with crim than I did with psych. And then I was so interested in philosophy. I was actually one credit shy of getting a philosophy minor, but they were like, you need to take history of philosophy and I'm not a history buff at all. So I just decided not to do that.
Kiara, the biggest question that pops into
hmm
my mind, I would kindly ask you why? Why criminology?
Oh.
Um, um, why psychology? I will not ask you because or yeah, of course you can share, but that's not the thing which pops a question into my mind. But criminology is popping really big question into my mind.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I've always just been really interested in the human mind, and I guess transgression and deviance were like at the forefront of that. I'm like, why is it that you can have like these two people that grow up in identical households, and then you have one that goes on to lead this path of criminality, and then one that just goes on to be like this outstanding citizen. And I was like, I would really like to get to the root of that. And part of that was exploring like the human psyche, which would be the psychology aspect. But then the other part of it would be exploring the criminological aspects, and so I remember when I first started at the University of Windsor, which by the way is a beautiful campus, um, they start you off with sociology so that you can kind of understand at its core the kind of social norms and theories that kind of dictate and govern how we function as humans, or how we function not necessarily as humans, but just as members of society. And then kind of criminology is born out of psychology or born out of sociology. So um, that's I don't know. I always wanted to know why. I've always asked the whys, and that's what was going to get me the answer. So
Not growing up because it's a bit of an exaggeration, but early in my youth, somewhere after 20, I'm kind of old. I started watching Criminal Minds,
I
and
love Criminal Minds.
I
I
knew it.
love
I knew it. I didn't even have to ask.
You didn't even
I
have to
knew it.
find that on Reddit.
No,
Yeah.
no. It's so easy. So I'm fascinated by the series. I was the last five through three seasons I haven't followed anymore because it. I hate this
Yeah.
all series. They don't manage to finish them when they have to be finished. So
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
I
different
agree.
story.
Yeah.
But the first, I don't know, seven, eight, maybe nine seasons were amazing. And um, was it
Yeah.
was it something from the movies that inspired you to go on this path, or was it purely curiosity?
I would not doubt at all that that had some influence because a lot of what we take in when we're children kind of dictates our path and what we express interest in when we get older. So yeah, I mean, because that's an old show, Criminal Minds. I don't even know when it came out, but I'm sure I was watching it when I was probably arguably too young to watch it, and it's definitely. I'm sure it had some influence on it. I've always been very curious, but let's see. Let's find out when Criminal Minds came out.
You made me curious as well, but I didn't want to propose the search.
It came out in 2005, so I would have been in the fifth grade, which is not too young to, yeah. So yeah, for sure that probably would have
For
influenced it.
some episodes, I would say.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know
I
if you
grew up
remember.
in a household like my dad would have me watch like the scariest of movies. And I think maybe that's why I'm not very fearful of anything. Whereas, like, some kids are scared of the dark, or some kids can't watch these scary movies because they're too fearful or something. I think that it's rooted in like our exposure to things. Like, if you realize, like, oh, this is just film and media and it's not real, then you can kind of take to it in a different way. But
I,
that could
I
just be.
I've discussed in one of the previous episodes as well that we haven't had back then this age, or at least I don't remember to had it to have it this age categorization of movies to say this is allowed to watch under 12, under 15.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. Like
Yeah.
literally nobody cared.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really I kind of vaguely remember when they started doing that because I remember when PG-13 became a
Exactly.
category and I was like, why is 13 the threshold?
Exactly.
'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah.
But someone made it up. It sounds stupid, but someone just came up with it, and I think it was in a given moment in time. I don't know when, but
Yeah.
yeah, Criminal Minds is a fascinating one, and the, the questioning now the not questioning, but having a question regarding the university. Did
Mhm.
they manage to feed your curiosity with the things that you learn in school?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when I started taking the philosophy courses, I just felt like everything kind of tied together really well. I do remember taking this one course, and it was like introduction into like reasoning or reasoning skills. And it really did explain why we're able to kind of make some inferences out of certain information. And then when I was learning about psych, it's like, here's exactly why you might make certain inferences, or, so it just, I feel like with the sociology, psychology, philosophy, and then the eventual criminology, everything sort of made sense. And I just felt like I had, um, I guess, the tools for like a greater understanding for why we do certain things. And I love that.
How much was the thing that you have received in university as a given, and how much did you have to research on yourself by yourself?
Um, that's a tough one to answer, because I do feel like the way that universities sort of teach you, or at least in Ontario, is like they kind of just give you the tools and then you have to go out and learn it. And then you were kind of report on what you've been able to kind of determine in your own time on your own research, um, and then kind of share that with the professor, and they'll be like, well, this is, I don't really know how they present it necessarily. It's just, I always think back to like the seminars that we'd have, and like we'd have like a topic, and it would be like, okay, so the nature of man. And then we'd have, of course, our university text, and we would do those kind of relevant or required readings. But then we would also have things like Google Scholar, and it's like, okay, we'll go look at some academic research that might support. your theory, and then, and that's the great thing about theories too, is like if you're a good theorist, you're going to look at what information supports your theory and what information doesn't support your theory. If you're not
Hmm.
able to identify what doesn't support your theory, then you're probably, you don't have a very successful theory, or you don't have a very viable theory. So,
I'm curious about the schooling systems around the world. That's why I'm asking these questions, because they are
okay.
so different.
Yeah.
Like everyone that you talk about, so everyone that I was talking to, it's usually a different approach, and I think this is a really interesting one
Hmm.
that I haven't really heard about it until now. Most probably we are also a different generation,
Yeah.
um, but still, it's really interesting. Um, I forgot the question now.
It's okay. I'm trying to think back of when I was in university, and I'm like, I'm getting old because it's been a while since I met.
I
Yeah.
will cut this part out. You're not old, okay? Let's make a definition there. Let's make a cut there.
Yeah.
I'm old. I don't remember when it was. Uh, um, when what age have you finished university? So how is the school structure in Canada?
I have a late birthday, so I started university when I was 16, I believe. And so I'd finished just before my 21st birthday.
Oh, that's kind of early, I must say.
It's
16.
because most people who start university are either like 17 or 18, but like my
Okay.
birthday is in October. So I
Oh,
just
okay.
had a late birthday, and then my parents had started me, like I started kindergarten when I was 3, but the rest of my friends were 4, because
Mm-hmm.
my parents were like, her birthday's in October, like she'd
Mm-hmm.
basically be 4. I don't know really, I don't remember exactly what it was, but that's what they told me, and I always realized that I was much younger. But
Mm-hmm.
that didn't stop me from going to the bars when the rest of my friends were 19. So,
They all show the IDs in front and you
yeah,
just enter at the back. So
yeah,
I'm with them.
I'm just here for the ride. Yeah.
What's the legal drinking age in Canada? It's
It's
21?
19, so not
Oh,
too far off, because Europe is, I don't
18.
know if it's 17 all across Europe or
It's depending on the countries. We
okay.
have we have really we have countries with a really big alcohol problem,
Okay.
and that's
Yeah.
where they raise the
Okay.
age. And we have countries like Germany where I think beer is legal starting with 14, if I remember it
Oh
correctly.
wow. Okay.
And in Italy, for example, we have crazy rules in Europe regarding alcohol. So in
Okay.
Italy, wine is legal starting with 10, 12, I don't remember. So
Okay,
it's
yeah.
like usually they give alcohol also to kids in Italy. So it's like you get wine like really really early in life. And
Yeah.
beer in Germany is a religion, and the same beer in UK is the same.
Yeah. Okay.
But there is another thing. It's not so strict as US
Yeah, the US is
or
it's
Canada, I think, in
yeah.
this case.
Yeah, no, I do. I remember when I first found out that you could like drink in a park in Europe, and I was like, guys, we need to move to Europe.
So,
Like,
like like Kiana, there is a habit in Germany, which is happening, I think, in roughly 1 month. It's a Christian religion, which is called the day where the Christ is going up in the sky. I don't remember the official name,
okay.
and that's usually on a Thursday, and that's where what they call Father's Day in Germany.
Oh,
Wait, that's not the whole story. So
okay.
the habit is like this: you get we have in Germany some now they have I'm not originally from here, but they have um, like trailers that you can carry behind you. Like usually they use them for kids when they go in a park or something, so they put them inside there. So it's not your normal stroller.
Okay.
It's
I
like
think
a,
I know what you're
a
talking about. Like,
four-wheeler that you pull behind you.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know what you're talking about.
And for Father's Day, they take one of those ca- uh, um,
Like
things,
carts or whatever, yeah.
like carts exactly. They put 20 bottle of beers inside, so full. Uh, there is this 20 bottles package here in Germany,
Yeah.
and they walk by around the village drinking it. And you have to imagine that around every bloody village in
Oh
Germany,
my
and
gosh.
everyone is wasted.
That's quite a culture. Oh man.
Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of rants, but I find it interesting to do
Oh,
this
no
exchange.
worries.
I love it. Um,
Yeah.
so we talked about university. How was so you are working, you said you are working in the field that you studied at the moment, right?
Yes, yeah.
Have you, how is that working in Canada? Did you get, because I do suppose that you are working in the official law enforcement.
No, so
Oh,
um so
okay.
Ontario is the only province that paralegals are able to practice law. So in any other province, they kind of operate in law under a different capacity. I'm in Ontario, so I do practice law.
Okay.
And the best way that I describe it is like they're kind of like what nurses are to doctors is what paralegals are to lawyers. So it's like a nurse can do
Oh.
a lot, but there are maybe some limitations in terms of the scope of what they can do without the presence of a doctor or the authority of a doctor. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. And so when I'd moved to Ottawa, I had taken an accelerated graduates program so that I could obtain my paralegal certificate. And then you basically apply, you take the examinations for the Law Society, and then if you pass, you're a licensed member, and then you still have to kind of, like any regulated body, keep up with that licensing and insurance and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do. So I work in criminal and quasi criminal law. So I basically just do summary conviction offenses, which are like the less egregious offenses, and then quasi criminal. I mostly just do Highway Traffic Act offenses, but I have done license act offenses. And then when there were a lot of kind of COVID offenses, I was doing those as well.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Interesting position. I haven't heard about something equivalent in Europe, I have to be honest, but interesting. So you're doing let's say, the whole work for a lawyer.
Yeah, well, I have my own clients, but I do also assist a lawyer as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. I thought it's law enforcement. That's why I asked, because that would have been another that would have raised up another curiosity in my head. Um, to give up a bit now about our email discussions from today. I did a detective job before we did the recording.
You did, yeah.
Uh, you left more of a trace in the internet that you know about.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but you are mentioning the loss of your father, which happened quite early. You said that your father was a war veteran.
He
Um,
was, yeah. I didn't
did
lose him until I was 23.
That's still early. I dare
Yeah,
to say
yeah,
that's still early.
for sure.
So for sure you are an adult. You are not a full grown up. I dare to say that as well. But you are an
Hmm.
adult. But it's still early. Like, I
Yeah.
think there is still the need of having him around. At least is my feeling.
Hmm.
How did that um, reshape your curiosity, your I don't know, life, your love, your life in general? How big of an impact had that on you?
I mean, it was a massive impact for sure. My dad was basically like the only, despite me growing up with a lot of family, as the years went on and like my early adolescence into my young adulthood, my dad really became like the only family that I had ties to. Um, and so
Hmm.
losing him just it felt like a massive loss. And it was so sudden, like, I didn't suspect that he was going to pass. So it just shifted my connection like to myself and to the world and like how I operated. My dad was really like my best friend, so it was kind of like any kind of dilemma that I'd have in life, I could just easily pick up the phone and give my dad a call. And like we shot the shit a lot. Like it was a very lax relationship that I had with my dad. And so to not have that anymore and to sort of be robbed of that was it was definitely a shift from anything that I'm used to. And like grief really changes like your perspective on anything. And the thing with grief is that it's so unique, it's almost difficult to kind of understand because every time you experience it, it's a little bit different. The ties that someone has to your life, your soul, your upbringing, it's always going to be a little bit different.
How did you deal with it? What was your uh, defense mechanism?
I do really clearly remember asking myself like either you can just give up and kind of like let your life go and just be angry at the fact that you've lost someone so important to you, or you can just keep going. That's the only time I remember having such a clear question with myself, but I just decided, to just keep on keeping on. I always not laugh, but it's hard for me to accept when someone says, like you're making them proud, because when you're experiencing grief, you're like, yes, but they're not here. So does it really matter? But I just didn't want to, I didn't want, I guess, his death to be for nothing. And I think the way that I deal with grief is I keep him alive in my memory because he just doesn't exist in this world. Like, you know what I mean? Like no one is calling him up. He doesn't have mail going to his address. So it's like I just keep him alive through my memory and through who I am. And like I am an extension of my father and the fact that we are obviously blood relatives. Um, so that's just kind of what kept me going. And then I am definitely a person that likes to be in solitude. So I remember I had a puppy, and he was like I had just got the puppy a week before my dad died. And so I felt like that was almost like a convenient thing that happened because I was like I have to take care of this like little life now. So that probably helped me with my coping as well, for sure.
I've had so many questions while you were speaking, but you
Sorry.
got me you got me lost in the story, and I hate to interrupt someone. But Kiana, you said that it passed out of the sun, so you haven't had any warning.
Yes, yeah, no warning. He died of a heart attack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I find through the statement that it's my choice what I do now. Either I stay and cry, let's say it like this,
Hmm.
and pretend there is no end to this, or I do move on and find my way to cherish him, even though he's not there.
Yeah.
And I also like the statement. That's why I said you lost me in the discussion, because I like the statement of he's not here. So like,
Hmm.
yeah, I could make him proud, but he's not here to see it. Are you a
Yeah.
religious person?
I'm not. I guess I grew up Christian, but not in a hyper religious type of way. And I had a lot of questions when I was a kid that I remember like printing them out and like giving them to like the preacher and like just not.
Sheldon Cooper, like
Yeah.
uh,
Never having those questions answered. So I definitely just kind of removed myself from the
that
church and then eventually that religion. So I think I identify it like now as like agnostic. So
that makes a problem for religion when you have questions, even
yeah,
though
they
it
don't
should
like
be the other.
questions.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
like questions. It should be the other way around, because I think that's an important statement. We don't know what's after this life. We only know what we
Hmm.
do here and what's important here, but we have
Hmm.
no idea what's after this life. And I think
Yeah.
it's important, whatever you decide to do, it's important to stand behind it and go on with it. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen is that you mentioned healing. One of the ways in which you healed yourself was through travel. Um,
Yeah.
was that something that you discovered after your father passed, or you knew it from before that you enjoy it? And
Um, I always knew that I wanted to travel, and when my dad passed, I wasn't like traveling per se. Like I was going places, but like they were still like close enough to home. Like I was kind of just getting like a cabin in the woods and just kind of just with my thoughts and probably a glass of wine or something, and
Mhm.
just dealing with life that way. Just kind of I liked the removal. Like I like just kind of being able to disconnect from like the everyday life and the kind of like the city life and just be in nature. I feel like that's very healing. But I didn't go like any place crazy after my dad
Mhm.
died.
Okay. You you mentioned that you like solitude, and I think that's an important part because travel usually has a solo part that nobody's talking about. So especially
Hmm.
when you do it on solo. But if you say that that's the part that you enjoyed, actually, I completely understand now the discussion because I wanted to ask you if it wasn't a bit of a lonely trip, but if you say that's the thing that you are craving for.
Hmm. And I think like I have my own theories about solitude. I think every person ought to approach solitude in a way where it's like empowering, because I think interdependency is great. It's how we operate as a society, and we absolutely need human connection. But we can live without it in some regards and in some capacities, and you have to be able to kind of live with and rely on yourself. Because as much as I do really identify with hedonism, I do also identify with nihilism. Um, because like hedonism is sort of rooted in, you know, we seek out all things pleasurable.
Hmm.
Um, and we try to avoid anything that is not going to give us pleasure or anything that's going to give us pain. And then nihilism is more of the approach that um, there isn't really any meaning to life. And even though it's a bit pessimistic, sure, it's like it's an
Mm.
extension of pessimism, but I also think it's valid. That argument is valid. Like maybe there is nothing. So life then just has to be what you make of it, and we can't assign it any greater meaning. Whereas I think when we start to trickle into things like religion, they want you to place meaning on certain things but not on others. And I don't think I want a religious text to dictate my life in that way. And I think solitude kind of gives you the opportunity to be introspective and to think about just you, your moral compass that's not connected to any religion, and how solitude sort of rewards the self. And that's really rooted in philosophy too. I can't remember the philosopher's name. I think it was Turk or Turkle or something like that. But he does focus on like emotions. I think he also touches on like technology and that influence on human nature. And then he also talks about the reward of solitude. So I wish I could remember more because it just feels pointless throwing out a philosopher's name, but
Um, I think that religion is used as a safety net.
I couldn't agree
Uh,
more. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I think whenever someone needs to have a safety net, they go there because it's hard to rely on yourself. It's hard to tell yourself, you know what? Nobody's there to save you. You are
Hmm.
the only one there,
Yeah.
and you have to deal with everything that you have on your plate now. And I think that's why everyone is relying on religion because you can always blame someone else. You can always you can
Yeah.
always say it was God's will. I
Yeah,
don't
oh,
know.
I hate that excuse. I really do. And I really do think religion is and can be a beautiful thing. And you know, I don't knock anyone that, you know, has a religious
No, 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 no,
affiliations,
no.
but it really is like at the end of the day, religion is just a religious belief in the same way that atheism is just I choose to not believe
Do you
in, you
know?
know.
Do you know Ricky Gervais?
I do. It's a, he said something about like it's just
He
one less
said
God than you
he's
know?
exactly. So we have 300,000 gods on the face of the earth. So I only have
Yeah.
one less god than you. It's the same. It's absolutely that thing. I think the spiritual part is part of our life, and it has to be there because
Yeah.
I refuse to believe that the soul is dying with the body.
I
That's
I agree.
That's my statement. But
Hmm.
that it doesn't fit in any of the theory that the priests from the Catholic Church who are extremely in love with children are wanted to sell us. I'm, I, I'm okay with that as well. I
Yeah.
think I think a big part of nihilism is actually the realism and curiosity of understanding why you are here, why you are trying to do things,
Yeah.
and what should you do so that it matters.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't see it as a pessimism, even though, of course, it's hard to deal with the problems by yourself. That's the
Yeah.
hardest part. That's why maybe it's pessimistic. But I have a question regarding to what you said, Kenna. You said that you like the solitude, and even though we are social social
Yeah.
beings, you enjoy the solitude. Why do you think people are not allowing them to be alone anymore?
I mean, there's a little conspiracy theorist devil on my shoulder that's like, it's like the government doesn't want you to know, but I think, but I think really what it comes down to is we're not teaching people to kind of look within themselves. We're more often pushing people to like look elsewhere for help. And I'm going to say something, but it is in no capacity a knock to therapy. I think everyone should get therapy, but I think that we're seeing a lot of people start to go to therapy, which is amazing. But we've never really posed somebody the question of like, what issues are you struggling with, or why do you think you like have these anger issues, or why do you think you have this anxiety? Like, to look inward is like the very first step, I think, to being human and knowing who you are and being grounded in who you are. Because with all of these theories and everything, it can get overwhelming. I remember there was this one time I had taken this class. I think I was in either only my second year of university, and it was a class on social constructionism. And am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Okay. It was a mind fuck. I
That's not a swear. That's
I
a
was like
reality. That's
everything
reality.
everything around me is like it's just socially constructed like the way that we govern ourselves like at some point or another it is just a like a facet of social constructionism, and I was like trying to navigate like how we got here and how we go about our lives, and like what about dismantling certain social constructs, but then we're popping up with a new social, and it was so much. And I think like those sorts of things really do influence our inability to kind of look inwards. And you had said something, and I had a comment, and basically you had said spirituality is it's necessary, is what you were kind of getting at, if I'm following correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
You reminded me of a class that I'd taken in university. It was actually at Windsor's law faculty, which apparently is one of the best law schools in Canada, which I wish I would have known before I left Windsor. but but anyway, I had attended a guest lecture on murdered and missing Indigenous women, and they had kind of touched on Indigenous culture and the connection that they have with the land. And it has always resonated with me just how like beautiful and raw and just kind of simple that approach is. And I think we've really lost ourselves in terms of our ability to connect again with ourselves, with our surroundings, but most importantly with nature. Because at the end of it, and here's the conspiracy theorist in me again, I'm like, if the world were to end and we kind of have like an apocalyptic type of event, all of the things that we are so interested in now, our laptops, our TVs, our iPhones, you know, even our brave rebel like espresso machines, like none of it matters, and we just need to know who we are. We need to know our land. We need to know ourselves. We need to know our fight or flight. Like those are the things that we forget, is that we are still animals at the end of the day, and we do have survival instincts. We have gut instincts. We have these things that people often forget. We have a psychological and physiological attachment and reaction to. So if we're feeling anxious, it is our body's natural response. And I think sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we're just like, well, you know, it's caused because I forgot that, I didn't get a promotion at my job. And it's like, it's not that at all. We forget who we are and we're trying to please these new systems of how to live. It's just not viable. If you were to ask me to predict what's going to happen in 100, 150 years, and that's not too far off, like I think that we'll see an absolute shutdown of what we used to know for human
You
society.
know,
I swear I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I do have my theories about where we're headed now.
I think that our natural instincts are messed up at the moment
Yeah,
because we are worrying for absolutely the wrong things. We are worrying
absolutely.
what our colleagues is thinking about us. We are worrying how to make our boss happy, and these are the nonsense things that we worry about it every day. And I think if a lion will approach us, we'll say,
Yeah.
"I'm okay, I'm,"
Yeah.
and this is a general issue of the society at the moment. I'm fully with you. And I think this not allowing ourselves to be alone anymore. When you have to stay for 2 minutes in a queue, you pick up your phone and you just start dumb scrolling.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that. I hate that I
We
can't
all are.
just, yeah.
So, if you are also guilty of dumb scrolling, because we just talked about it, snap out of it and get stuff done with Lofumi. That's my way to focus on what I'm doing with the help of some chill lo-fi beats. So, if you study, work, or create like me, and you want to do that without losing hours to nonsense, download the Lofumi app now and vibe into productivity. Check out the link in the description.
I did try everything. I uninstalled the social medias on my phone. I did keep uninstalling and reinstalling them back.
Yeah.
It's a pain, but it is unfortunately this, and
Yeah.
you don't get to see what's around you. You don't get
Yeah.
to interact with people, like to have social interaction, like look at each other, like
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing, and the second thing, even I love it how I've seen a quote one day, and I loved it because we have it said that we some I will butcher it for sure, but the idea of it was that we created some jobs where we sit in an office for a whole day long so that we can go in a closed area to run on a fixed place so that we do our
Hmm.
movement. So we
Yeah.
we we kind of invented our self comfort zones where we are
Yeah.
doing the things that we have done before in the wildness as
Yeah.
well. And this is but this is one thing which I'm worrying about too, because we are really not allowing to talk to ourselves anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, I think intentionality is kind of lost on humanity right now. I think we used to be intentional with, what we do. And I had actually just recently attended like a webinar from Gabor Mate. I don't know if you know who that is.
When the
Um,
body says no.
yeah, and it was for, I think, the Heal seminar is what it was, and it kind of addresses like trauma. Um, oh, I'm gonna see if I can find that little invite, and then I'll see what it was called. And I can't find it. And I don't want to
Doesn't
hang
matter.
us up here, but it was it basically addressed it like the way that we deal with trauma and what trauma really is and how we can kind of move forward from it. It was a really insightful webinar for sure, and I just feel like when we when we can kind of figure out why we do what we know how to move forward. But if we never ask ourselves that, then we're always relying on someone else to be able to help guide us towards that answer. And I feel like sometimes therapy itself can be a crutch if we're not given the appropriate tools to deal with trials and tribulations on our own. Um, but that's all I'll say about that.
I think slowly it raised the need of another episode. Based on our discussion, I think we are pausing a lot of topics. Um, I have read the book, and I have the title in front of me because unfortunately it's written by two Japanese philosophers.
Okay.
It's Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga.
Okay.
And the Romanian, because I read it in Romanian, it's called The Courage Not to Be Liked.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Um, and it goes on a different approach of of trauma, because he's saying, okay, you don't have to. Trauma is there, whatever you do, and we are who we decide to be at the moment, and we don't have to make someone happy today because someone made us unhappy a few years ago. But the courage to go there, to not care about the feedback that you get, to not care about making the others happy, that's a huge courage that you have to build up to. But it's an interesting book.
Yeah. It does sound interesting. I'll have to. Well, I mean, if it's in English, if it's
It's
available
in
in
it's
English,
in English, yeah, of course, of
I
course.
unfortunately don't speak any other languages to
No,
read it in
I
English.
have. So I usually, I usually, of course, you prefer to read on your mother's language because it's the most comfortable situation that you can be in. I in Germany since 10 years now. I read in English. I'm not so confident in my German. I read and use it for work every day,
Yeah.
but I still prefer reading in English. But
Okay.
wherever
Yeah.
I do find a book in Romanian, I order it because it's even
Yeah.
nicer.
Yeah.
Um, but it's called The Courage Not to Be Like. Two Japanese
Okay.
philosopher. Interesting book.
Yeah.
I will dig in. I have two quotes from Reddit that I took from you, Kiana, and I would like to
Okay.
dig into them.
Sure.
The first one was, life is a series of choices and consequences.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. I really feel like that's all life is. Like because people often get caught up in what is the meaning and what can I do to make my life more meaningful. And I think that the very simple answer is to just live it. Life isn't about always getting things right, but we have so much fear about getting things wrong that sometimes later in life we'll come to regret just not having done the thing in the first place.
But sorry, I have to interrupt you. What should we understand by getting the things right? Right for whom?
Right for yourself. Well, I guess like that's a really good question. I think when I think about it, I think right for myself, but some people do make decisions to please others. So it really depends, like, are you a people pleaser type person? Are you living for yourself or are you living for the approval of others? What are you living for? What do you wish to accomplish? And so many people, in my opinion, waste their lives on things that are trivial. And it's not that I'm saying that career development and professionalism are trivial and meaningless, but it's not, no one is writing that on your gravestone. I always think about what you want to be remembered as, not what you want others to remember you as, because very soon, our lives will end and we will just become a memory. And I think if you're able to think highly of yourself and make decisions for yourself that benefit you, not to be selfish in the world, but to know that you are important enough to put first at times, I think that those around you and those who love you and value you or would say, they live their life, with meaning, with purpose, with intention, with curiosity. And I think that sometimes when all we want is the promotion, all we want is the title, all we want are like the glamorous things, all we want is the Gucci bag or whatever, it means nothing. It has no bearing on who you are at your core. And I think when I say life is a series of choices and consequences, almost every moment that we have, it's choice. It's a choice if you wanted to have me on your podcast. It's a choice if I wanted to be here. And then we have to think, well, what's the worst that could happen? I could be an awful guest, and it could just be like, you have to scrap this whole thing because I was just so awful and there was nothing good, no good material. And then you feel like, okay, I've wasted 2 hours. That's the worst that could happen. Does that suck? Absolutely. But what if I end up being a really great guest? What if we end up being really great friends? then it's like, that's not a waste of 2 hours. And then I think you just have to weigh those decisions on what you're willing to do, how much of your time and your effort and your intention you're willing to put into things and decisions. And I even struggle with that now. Like, I'm not perfect in my decision making, especially when it comes to moving. Like, I want to move out west. And I'm so scared of what if I move there and I absolutely hate it? And then this other part of me is like, so what if you move there and you hate it? Then move back home. You know what I mean? So just consequences. Like, how bad is the consequence? How dire is it? And if it's not that bad, then just do it. Just live it, because you only get one life, as cliche as that is. So.
It's the thing is that while trying to make everyone like us, while trying, by the way, I've sent you the link to the book in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
While trying to make someone else like us, will our life not flow? It's not flowing in front of us without enjoying it, because the question at the end is, are you being happier if you make happy your colleagues because he saw you with the Gucci bag? I don't think so.
I think it's dissociation now. I feel like we lose who we are in the effort to become somebody else that's liked, and you see it a lot in these younger generations. You People will give up naturally who they are, inherently who they are. They'll give up their authenticity and their autonomy just to be liked. And sometimes I think the hard thing is, with the way that society is right now, is being liked is probably more rewarding especially if you have like a social presence. And I'm thinking in the context of like influencers and stuff. Maybe sometimes selling your soul is okay if you get paid or if you're noticed. But the contrast to that is so many influencers or so many individuals of fame are so unhappy with themselves because they've lost who they are to the money and to the fame, and always wishing to please other people. But if you just start with the active choice to please yourself and dealing with the consequence that maybe you'll lose some followers, then
I
there's a
have to
thing.
tell you, I have to tell a short story. I started this podcast and it's not such a long time, so somewhere in December this last year.
Oh yeah.
And since I'm not big and it's a small one, I love doing it. I love talking to people and I enjoy the process. And I keep getting advice. This is too long. Nobody would listen to it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It makes me happy.
Yeah.
I don't care. I
I
just don't.
love that.
Just
Yeah. It's got to be for you, because then if you're doing it for someone else, and what used to be your passion is no longer
if you don't
that.
like it, that means it's not for you. It's
Yeah.
so easy. You
Exactly.
can have a lot other things that you can hear, you can listen to. You don't
Yeah.
have to listen or watch this one. No, you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, this need that you see, this need of getting confirmation from the others, and most probably you are meeting this or you are seeing this through your job as well. Do you think it's a desperate run for status, for social status?
Uh, I think generally, absolutely, and it's part of the reason why I hate TikTok. It's an app that I'll never join, because I feel like it really puts on display like just absolute bullshit. Like, I just don't understand why people are getting famous from doing absolutely asinine things, or just silly things. Like, you should never be absolutely like pivoted into fame because you did a TikTok dance. And it's not to say, oh, these individuals are worthless or talentless. It's just that there are so many people absolutely working their ass off, trying to make a difference, and are just genuinely maybe a bit more intelligent and maybe a bit more talented, that absolutely deserve that type of resource and recognition that that platform allows people to get. And instead, we just see, I don't know, it's just brainless kind of. When I hear about like TikTok stars, like, that's why I don't really like to do any research on like what's trending or who's trending. I just don't care, because I just know that whatever they're doing is just a little stupid, and I don't I don't want any engagement in that. And I think that maybe if we were able to shift the focus on people who are like, I'm trying to make a difference in the world by doing X, or or people who are working on, cancer research, or something that means something to the world. When the apps are done and when we die and all of it, something that's just a little bit more than doing some of that,
You
like
know,
just
I keep saying there are three things which I constantly talk about. One of it is Idiocracy. I don't know if you have seen the movie, but I'm afraid of Idiocracy. If you haven't seen Idiocracy, I again cannot recommend it enough.
okay, I'll check it out. Idiocracy.
Um, it's I think it's kind of an old. It's not a new movie, but
Yeah.
the plot is extremely interesting, and we are going towards that plot
Oh
with
yeah. That
big
does not
steps.
shock me.
Yeah. That's the first thing. Second thing is for whomever has not read 1984 by George Orwell.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know if you know it, but
I do, yeah.
an even better book because 1984 is it's fiction. Like for sure is a fiction is a fiction story. It's not something
Yeah.
which is real. But Orwell also wrote Animal Farm. Do you know Animal Farm?
No, I do
So
not.
I recommend everyone to read Animal Farm. And even though I think it's an almost 100-year book, if I'm not remembering, if I'm not
Mm.
uh, mistaking. I know it's 1954, not yet. 1954 is the movie.
Okay.
I just got curious now. 45. Also George Orwell, so still the same author as 1984. And I think Animal Farm is one of the most actual book about our society, which is not having any people as the main characters.
Okay.
It's shocking.
Okay. I'm gonna have to pull that up. I'll remember to read it.
And it's not too long because it's meant to be like a short story.
Okay.
um, Kiana, this was the so uh, maybe you don't believe in fate at all, right?
I would say I'm agnostic, so I believe that there's probably some type of higher power out there, some omniscience or whatever. Um, but I don't have like a religion that I follow. I don't, there's no church, there's no prayer. It's just the knowledge that there's probably something else out there, because
Mm-hmm.
it would be hard to believe that all of this came into existence as a result of the Big Bang, but it would also be stupid to discount the Big Bang. I just feel like there has to be an overlap between science and then some higher power, some you
Everything
know
fits out perfectly. That's why I do think that you.
yeah.
Do you think we need to suffer to be happy?
Oh, that's a good question. There was this thing that I had said, and I was so proud that I had said it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a poet." And I had said it back in high school, and it was, "Can you truly enjoy victory without the pain of defeat?" And I think the answer is you could enjoy victory, but you would never know how sweet the victory was unless you failed, you know. Um, I don't justify suffering. I think that if we can avoid suffering, we certainly should. And that kind of goes back to hedonism, is like we never would really want to seek out suffering. But I think suffering is it's just what happens when you live. It goes back to life being a series of choices and consequences. Like you just have to be able to make a choice, and maybe it's the wrong choice, maybe you suffer for it, but you live to tell the story, kind of thing. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
The second quote that I have also from one of your Reddit posts is regarding what makes a relationship work, and you wrote on in one of the posts, applying effort is a form of love. Do you remember it?
I don't. So I would address, I think I'll still respond to it, but I think I'll address it with caution, because I think context kind of matters. Because effort alone is not enough. I think love alone is not enough. But if you're putting in the effort to kind of rectify something or to prove something, to demonstrate something, then, that is a form of love. That is a form of you saying, I'm going to undertake to make a difference here. And I'm going to, it's kind of like a vow, you're saying, I'm going to be doing this in the name of our friendship or in the name of our relationship or in the name of, whatever it is that you love and are working for or towards. So
How do you think this differs between doing it for a friendship or doing it for a relationship?
I don't think there is a massive difference. I think that part of just being in a relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic, is being able to be there and show up for your friend or for your partner. And that's through effort, in terms of how you do that. Every person is different. Obviously, when you're in a relationship with someone, it's more intimate and you might have greater expectations for your partner, your romantic partner, than you would your friend. But I think that if you value your relationships and are maybe one of those types of people that has like a closer, more intimate circle, those are, if you've got a close circle of like 10 people, you could probably rely on all 10 or most of them to kind of help you out if you're in a pinch. Whereas some people keep maybe a group of 25 friends, and maybe of those 25 friends, maybe only 7 of them, they'd be like, I would call you if I needed you. Whereas I really do try to keep my friend group too. If I call you, know that I trust you when I need you. I don't like people who don't pick up the phone when I need them though. I am a little salty about that for sure. Because I'm definitely not the type to call for help. So if I'm calling, um, kind of pick up
Do
is
you
my
think
expectation.
do you think there is a part of emotional intelligence that is missing for some people?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I think we all have differing levels of emotional intelligence, and for some, it almost feels like it's non-existent. And I think it's just someone's inability to really understand like their own feelings and their own emotions. Because if you're able to understand your own, you should be able to kind of put it into perspective to understand someone else. Yeah, not fully, but to some capacity, you've got
Yeah,
to
you
be
have
able to
to.
say,
I would say put yourself in their shoes, and
yeah,
if you are on the other side of that call, because that's why I ask you. You mentioned the
yeah.
call, the calling for help. If you are on the other side of that call, would you take that call? Most probably yes, depending on who's calling, but most probably yes.
Hmm.
And I do think that's a huge part of emotional intelligence to try to understand someone from from his perspective, and that's so
Yeah,
hard. That's so
yeah.
hard, and we don't have the time, and there is so many TikToks that we have to see. And
Yeah.
yeah, um, getting now to 1.5 hour in. I told you I love to talk to people, so and you love to talk
Yeah.
as well. You are a great partner in discussions. That I love talking to you. But the reason, but we end up getting to the topic that we initially had in our mind.
Of course.
First thing first, as a ground for the setting the ground for the future of the discussion. Do you think there is a setting that we naturally have of being good or being evil?
Um, that's a good question. I'm like I was prepared for it, but like when you answer it, you have all of these like things going on in your head. Um, I feel like it takes me to a quote, and I did get this quote tattooed, and and I actually do think it's from Criminal Minds, but I was never able to figure out where it was from because I had it written on a piece of paper, and then it went into an iPhone 3, and then I've just had it ever since. And then finally I got it tattooed in 2020, and it's we are not sinners because we sin because we are sinners. And it kind of speaks to how I think there is some inherent um evil in all of us. I think that we all have the capacity to sin. I think it's within, almost feel like we have to sin in order to kind of navigate the world that we're in. We have to make, again, these series of choices and consequences. So yeah, I don't think that anyone is inherently um, good per se. I think that we do have an evil that we all need to address. I think the good is probably more so a choice than the evil is.
The quote is from a religious theoretician. His name is Sproul. I don't remember the initial, the first two names, but he's a that's a hard word. A theologian. So he's doing theology.
Okay. Okay. Good to
Doesn't
know.
matter. Doesn't matter but
I
it's
got somebody's words tattooed, so
exact.
yeah.
Um, has your mind changed since you are doing this job? Have you had a different opinion before you started?
No, I think that if anything, maybe the job has made me a bit more compassionate while at the same time a bit more realistic. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about criminal law and they're like, you're defending criminals. But then when you think about it, if you are ever in a situation where you've been charged with something, you're going to want somebody that's going to represent you, especially if you feel that it's not true or you've been wronged. And I think when we address criminal law, um, we are just affording people the right to representation because you are innocent until proven guilty, and it should always be that way. We're upholding the rights of the accused the same way that we would for anybody, even a person that's not the subject of a criminal investigation. We all have in Canada, it's the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and they should be upheld. They're important. They shouldn't be dismissed. They shouldn't be and they shouldn't be breached. And I think people are often like, you would represent someone that murdered someone. And the answer is yes, absolutely, because we need to look at the facts, and most people don't have the facts. Most people who even try to do some semblance of due diligence are just looking at, articles online. But even the articles online, especially in Canada, only give you so much information. And of course, they're going to give you the information that's sensationalized. They want to give you, the crazy words, and it's like, someone was bludgeoned to death, or but they're not going to give you the specifics of the case that led to that event, or maybe that they had other suspects, or maybe that, they are missing certain evidence or disclosure or video that actually nails this person to the cross. And I think sometimes we get clients where we're like, yeah, this guy fucking did it for sure. But it doesn't necessarily matter if they did it. It's if the Crown can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person
Mhm.
is in fact guilty of that offense. And if we can prove that there is a reasonable doubt that this is the person that was able to perpetrate that crime, then we can't secure conviction that coincides with our justice system. Otherwise, it would bring the administration of justice into disrepute. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Is it true that they have to be honest with you when you initially have contact with them? Like you have that let's say given thing that they have to be honest with them and tell them if they did or not, if or that's just movies theory that
Um,
that is not fitting reality.
I think I'll maybe not answer that question because
Okay.
in Canada we do have like certain things with the Law Society, and I don't want anyone to interpret what I say as like
Mm-hmm.
legal advice. But you should be forthcoming with your lawyer. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
deceive your lawyer, because what happens when you're not forthcoming with your lawyer is if they have devised a defense and they're basing it off of an incorrect version of events that you presented to them. If there is a way in hell that the Crown can prove or police can
Mm-hmm.
prove that that's not what happened, you've just really shot yourself in the foot. So you should
Mm-hmm.
absolutely be forthcoming with your counsel. You are protected under solicitor client privilege. That doesn't mean that you need to tell them about your and the entirety of your criminal empire, but just as it relates to the charges.
Like all the drug dealing network.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe one or more stories that you can share that impressed you in your career?
Um, impressed me. I don't think so. No, no, none that impressed me. I think like sometimes I get shocked when I read about certain cases, especially when they're cases in Ottawa, because I'm like, I still have this conception that Ottawa is this sleepy, boring town. So when we have these kind of egregious crimes happening, I'm like, what the like I'm like, what is happening? It's just so crazy to wrap my head around, but ignorance is bliss sometimes, but I do love reading about what's going on. But yeah, Ottawa has had some crazy criminals for sure. Like we've had people get into some pretty uh, precarious kind of situations, but they've all been afforded great legal counsel, so that's great. But yeah, just nothing that's really impressed me per se. Like I feel like I'm very good at bringing certain applications before the court. I think all of my applications thus far have been successful, but I haven't been doing it for a super long time, so I would not gloat about my success rate,
You
unless
have to.
I've got like 10
Nobody
plus
else,
years of experience, then
nobody else is doing it except you, so you should
yeah,
do it.
there we
Um,
go.
do you have a case in history that impressed you in the crime history? Let's call it like this.
When you say impressed, do you mean like interested me, or I was so impressed that like the defense counsel was able to like
Interested.
secure a
Interested.
oh gosh, there's so many. I feel like that would be me referring out to like I think the true crime podcast capture it best. And I know that there for Canadians, there's True Crime Canada, and I've been impressed with pretty much every case that she's presented. The ones that there is one that was close to home. I'll see if I can find the name of it. I know it was in Renfrew, Ontario, which is about 2 hours out of Ottawa. And it was like a massacre. Oh, I can't remember his name. He had an interesting name. It will come to me. But funnily enough, the lawyer that I work with was originally on that case. It ended up being like a domestic, it was born out of a domestic kind of violence situation. And he went on to kill, I think it was at least three women. He had a very interesting name, and it's just it's escaping me right now. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but yeah, True Crime Canada is a great podcast for Canadians to listen to if they're ever curious about kind of what's happened in Canada. Just because I think Canada does have a reputation for overall being safe, but we've definitely
Mm-hmm.
had some very interesting cases happen throughout all the provinces and territories, and some of them are just an absolute slight to our criminal justice system, and then some of them are, we've have incredible investigative efforts on behalf of like police or RCMP. So yeah, I don't think I could pick one. I love listening to true crime.
I, it's the most popular genre of podcast in the world at the
It
moment.
is, yeah.
Um, I've seen a lot of. So my wife is into it. I'm not. I have to be
Okay.
honest. And she told me the story about the guy. Unfortunately, I have the same problem as you. I don't remember his name. Who
Always
killed his
blanking.
family, killed his whole family. So his wife and two baby daughters. So I think
Hmm.
1 and 3 or 2 and 4 or something like this.
Yeah.
And he threw them into the city water.
Okay.
I think it's water or gas uh, barrels. I don't remember. And
Okay.
they discovered them there. It's an impressive case, and he reported this disappearance. And
Oh, is
he
this the like suburban husband in the US? And this
yes,
happened like okay, yeah. And I did watch that I listened to the podcast first, but then it come out with a documentary like a year or two
exactly.
later.
I
Yeah.
think it was Chris something. I don't remember the
Yeah.
family name, but it shocked me. Uh, Being a father now, it destroyed me because I
Yeah.
I have no words in describing the feelings that you can have for your son
Yeah.
or daughter, and I really have no words. And nobody that is not a father is able to understand this. But this is something that it's human. It's not explainable in words.
Yeah.
and killing your two daughters, and with one of the daughter asking you what you are doing to mommy and stuff like this, it's something that
Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It really is. And that's it really goes back. I always wonder like what caused people to do this, like how did this happen, like what triggered these events, like what triggered this criminality, what led to this like level of deviance, especially when we talk about domestic violence. The options that, usually the husband or the wife has, whoever is doing the murder, is, divorce or murder. And a lot of them choose murder. And it's like, what goes on in the brain that makes you choose that? And part of it is, not wanting to kind of let that other person live their lives. It has a lot to do with
That's the first
feeling
thing.
possessive.
But I think the second thing is the topic that we discussed before, Kiana, is the social status.
Oh, for
Because
sure.
it's bad that someone is telling that you had an affair before the divorce, and you feel bad for that, and then you kill them, and then you say, okay, it happened, now I have a new relationship, it's normal. I,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Seeing all these cases, I realize there are, of course, I'm again butchering it because
Hmm.
I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, but you have always three possible things that I've seen until now. Uh, Pleasure, which is the biggest one. Then you have
Hmm.
either love or money. That's the categories in which I always try to feed these cases.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
I- Based on your experience, is that correct?
Sorry, you said it was love, money, and what?
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Yeah. Yeah. I could agree for sure. There are so many moving factors that it would be almost difficult to discount any one category, you know. Um,
Um, what did philosophy teach you about the human nature that you didn't get in criminology?
Um, like there's so many moral theories, and like we have like so many philosophers with different schools of thoughts. And I remember when I first sat down in my morality and moral controversies class when I first started university, and the top thing was, an atheist probably has a greater moral compass than someone who is religious, and religion is born out of philosophy. It's born out of these schools of thought. It's really what says, what makes life worth living. So it explores human purpose. It explores our virtues, our vices, and I think one of the main kind of concepts was morality being like sort of an outgrowth of human nature. And I think the way I interpret it was that, because we're becoming more and more introspective as the years go on, our human nature is like we're trying to keep up with all of the changes. We're trying to keep up with the social constructionism. We're trying to keep up with the status quo, and we're trying to please everybody, including ourselves, and trying to balance that is really difficult. So I feel like philosophy, just having so many different schools of thoughts about morality, religion, conscious, isolationism, culture, socialism, like all of these like little subcategories, it just really kind of speaks to how we get to that thought and how we're able to address those sort of dilemmas as they pop up in our day to day, especially as
Mhm.
an evolving species.
So interesting. I think it's a lot to study there. I think it's such a complex topic, like I don't know, like space studies is. So I somehow think that you can build parallels between them. It's
Yeah.
impressive how big of a topic it is.
Yeah, it really is.
If you could leave one idea behind for humanity, what what would it be?
One idea. Uh, oh my gosh, you're asking the hard questions here. Um, I guess I think at one point or another we all need to ask ourselves like what we think the purpose of life is. So I think maybe just if I were to leave anyone with an idea, it would be to like as a reminder to ask ourselves like what it is that we want, what it is that we live for. And maybe just as an attachment reminder, that like the answer is a lot more simple than we think it is. I think that's the idea that I would leave people with, like maybe kind of ponder that, and that can be somebody else's philosophical theory, you know. Yeah,
I like it.
there
I
we
like
go.
it. It's easy. It's easy.
Yeah,
It's
simple.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's simple that you think it is. Um, can I I enjoy this conversation. I loved it. I think we are both talkers, and I think we have a lot that we share interests for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Before we wrap this first episode that we do together, I really hope it's the first one. I think we still have topics that we can
Oh
cover.
yeah, we both rant for sure. Yeah.
We have to do an Ask Reddit one, or am I the
Yeah.
asshole for?
Oh yeah, and then we can just weigh in on the topics. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up the first episode,
Yeah.
I have some rapid fire questions that I need to ask you. That I want to
Okay.
ask you. I don't need to do anything, but I want to.
All right. All right.
Uh, what's one philosophy quote you live by?
If it's not the kind of extension of the, sinners, one, I think, oh man, rapid fire too. I would say I probably don't have one because I have like this document that I always refer to. It's like 30 pages and it was originally my class notes, but then I transformed it because I thought I was going to do a dissertation. And in like blue italics, I have quotes from every philosopher. So if you want, what I can do is I can pull it up and I can just stomp on a philosopher, but that's the best I can probably give you.
Okay, but that makes sense. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't have to decide, but it's cool.
Yes.
Um, if you could travel anywhere tomorrow, no limits, like really no limits, where would you go?
I loved Indonesia, so I would definitely go back. I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful country, and there's just so much to do. And I would recommend not just Bali, but absolutely Bali, but outside of Bali. I think the culture, the people, the food, the views, all of it is amazing. I actually felt very at home when I was in Indonesia, so I would definitely go back there in a heartbeat.
Interesting choice, like really interesting one. One tattoo you still want to get, but you haven't got yet.
I don't know if it's my end. So sorry. I like the audio is different now and I can't hear you as well. And I don't know if
I
it's
have
me.
no issue.
Okay. That's okay. I can
Uh,
I can still kind of hear you.
Let's pull it through. It's not so much.
Okay.
um, one tattoo you still want to get, but you haven't got it yet.
What's a tool that I want to get?
No, what tattoo?
Oh,
Tattoo,
tattoo. Oh man.
not
I just got
non-native.
one a few months ago and I feel like I haven't really thought too much about getting tattoos since. But I'll probably get another hand tattoo. I kind of want to get one of like the heart and the mind. So like half of it
Mm-hmm,
is like a heart and then half of it is a brain is kind of
mm-hmm.
the next one that I'm thinking of for sure.
Nice.
I have a lot, so running out of space.
Is human nature more beautiful or more terrifying?
Society starts to evolve, it's more terrifying, but I still think that we have the capacity to get back to our roots and our spirituality. So I would still say it's beautiful, but most things that are beautiful are terrifying. So,
you
yeah.
you went up and down on a roller coaster. Really nice, I must say.
Yeah.
um, do you mind sharing with us what's your favorite movie?
Oh, I have so many. I think the one that always pops up into my head is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I freaking love that movie. Most of the movies that I like to watch are like horror films, but I love, love, love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's one of like my earliest childhood movies that I can remember,
Mhm.
and it's just such a good one. It's very lighthearted.
What's your favorite band or song?
I would absolutely recommend the 1975. Um, but Ben Howard is an incredible artist. He's one of my favorite. And then lastly, Kaleo. If you haven't heard of any of those ones, check at least one of them out. I like folk indie music, so that's kind of the vibe that they get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get the influence from your parents?
No, not at all.
No?
No, no.
Would have been a cool story to sell.
No, we definitely have no similar music tastes at all, but I do listen to a little bit of everything. And because I am from Windsor, Ontario, I still think Eminem is the greatest rapper. So at least that.
Uh,
At least that.
we agree on that.
There we go.
It's my generation as well, so I
Yeah.
still remember the real Slim Shady.
Yes, yes, yes. How could we forget?
Absolutely. And the fact that he's still rapping really nice at 50, over 50 now,
It's
it's impressive.
crazy.
It's
Yeah,
impressive. And
yeah,
his flow and hip, wow. Yeah, we can rant on that a whole episode.
yeah.
Um, Kiana, the last question, what's your favorite book?
Oh, The Wisdom of Psychopaths is a really good one. I do not know the author's name, but I can
I
find.
will find it out.
Okay,
I will find out and I will just post it here.
it's very good.
Um,
Yeah, Wisdom of
okay.
Psychopaths is a great book.
Um, what's next for you, Kiana? You said that you plan to move from your current place. What do you plan for you in the next period?
I actually don't really have a big plan, which is kind of different for me, but I do just want to be out west. I want to be as close to the mountains as I can get, and just kind of live that life for a little bit. I want to start off on a temporary basis, so it's been a little bit hard securing like an apartment or a condo that will accommodate just like a 6 to 8 month kind of lease, but I might just do a year just cause so. But that's really all I have. I want to continue to grow in my career. I do have an interest for podcasting, but I just don't have the time for it. So that's why I was so excited to just kind of meet with you and it's great. This conversation was great.
I love it as well. Do you think that that you had a topic that you want to touch and we haven't today?
No. No, I know that you had asked, there was like a little bullet about my tattoos, but I
Yes.
feel like that's very like could be a very quick answer. It's just I do think tattoos is self-expression. I think it's not so much modern, it's existed for centuries. And I love tattoos. And that's really all it.
Why are we judging it as being modern?
I think because it kind of just goes back to social normative. So like when we started to have more structure in society, and it was kind of like we had certain norms and the nuclear family and all of that, it didn't make sense for anyone to have tattoos or piercings or, a different colored hair. Like it didn't make sense. It felt like you were being too deviant, too transgressive, too different, and difference sometimes scares people. And that's the thing, it can be terrifying, but so.
I come from several times, but in my original my birth country in Romania, they are kind of frowned upon. That
Yeah.
means if you have tattoos, you can barely get the. I would not say barely, but it's harder for you to get a job. And it's not important which job. And I do remember my first contact with the Western society here in Germany when I went to a store and I've seen the cashier who had tattoos on her hand, and I thought that
Yeah.
would never work in
Yeah.
Romania. Never. Like,
Yeah. It is very, very taboo, and it still exists in so many other places in the world. Like Japan really doesn't like tattoos. And it you can like be denied from like onsens in Japan. You can be denied from like gyms. So tattoos are still definitely considered taboo in many cultures, but for many different reasons. And it also depends on really who you are. It might be more acceptable if you're a man, less acceptable if you're a woman. You might be considered less feminine. It also depends on the color of your skin. I think we make so many inferences when we just see somebody that has tattoos. So,
prejudice. I
yes.
would just call it prejudice because this is the definition of it.
Yes.
And you see someone with tattoos, you suppose that they are mean intended.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Kiana.
Of course, thank you.
I enjoyed the conversation, and I really hope that we do this again someday. And I will, if you will not drop me the email, then I will.
Absolutely. I absolutely loved this conversation, and I would be happy to be a guest again on your podcast.
Thanks so much. Have a nice one. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye. Take care.